Almost 6 p.m. on the East Coast. West Coast is, I think you're at like 3 p.m. right now. But here we go. About to get this thing going. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Second week of the Twitch streams. And I'm very excited for this topic tonight, what we're going to be talking about. Wait till it hits exactly 6. I want to get in the habit of starting pretty much exactly on time. So let's see if we can do that here. Okay, 6 p.m. Eastern time. So like I said, welcome back everybody. If you were here last week for the introduction stream, I appreciate it. So thank you for that. This is stream number 2 for me. Tonight we're going to be discussing a very important topic, something that I have discussed on my Instagram, some of my other social media platforms, which is therapy for musicians, for music makers, creatives, whether you're an engineer, singer, rapper, producer, anything, any job to do with music. Therapy specifically for us. And I think this is something that it's obviously touched on a lot. Especially the last 3 or 4 years. I think since probably the COVID times around 2020 is when I saw a lot more people talk about mental health and mental well-being, things like that, because that was such a, it was a tough time for a lot of people. I think people had the time to kind of sit with their lives a little bit and kind of reevaluate and really think about, not only how do we treat ourselves, but how are we treated by the places we work at, the other people in our lives. Are we being mindful of ourselves and others and how we're actually feeling, as opposed to just saying, oh, everything's okay, you know what I mean, which I think we're all guilty of doing that from time to time. So I think it's been a real point of discussion over the past few years, for sure, at least from what I've noticed, and you might have noticed it as well, which I think is super important. I think society in general should be moving in that direction and just keep slowly getting there. Not to touch on too much of outside of music, but I honestly want to see every job eventually have mental health programs and access to resources. That should be a requirement for places of work for their employees, because it's something that is vital to people being able to live without having these negative things come up. And jobs are a lot of take, and not a lot of give, or just give in general. So I thought of that a lot, about how, hopefully one day, maybe in my lifetime, maybe in somebody else's lifetime, we can see it be something that gets touched on to that regard, on that level. But I think the progress that's been made over the past few years in general in society has been super, super good. So, basically what I wanted to do was take that topic and apply it to musicians. And so I posted a Instagram reel probably a month ago at this point, talking about, it was really just asking the question of, if you're a musician, have you ever sought therapy? Have you ever been to a traditional therapist? Do you do online therapy? Or is music your therapy? Because a lot of people will say, music is a form of therapy, and that's their escape from reality or their outlet. For me, it's been a lot of that. I've never gone to a therapist per se. I've never done online therapy. But I know for a lot of people that helps, because you get to have a conversation with someone that is completely a stranger and doesn't have any skin in the game, if you will. They don't have any bias toward your situation and what you're dealing with. So I've always looked at it kind of with a glass half full, but also a glass half empty kind of thing, as far as seeing a therapist. And I'm not saying I will never do that, but to me, I've found other ways that help me as an individual. But I asked that question, and I had a lot of people respond to me and tell me different things. as far as like what they do to get help, especially as creatives, because I've always thought that being a creative is it's one of the most fulfilling things, as we know, but it's also a pretty lonely experience a lot of the times. And the way things are now, you might just be making music on your own for the most part. You're collaborating online. You might see people now and again, like in person, but for the most part, you might just be doing your own thing, and you're not really surrounded by other like-minded people that understand like what you're going through. And that's something that I definitely can relate to, for sure. Is just like, you're just on the grind so much, and you don't really have time to like sit and evaluate where you're at in life sometimes. And then when you take a step back and look at it, you're like, wow, I'm really alone out here, or at least it feels that way. So unless you have people to talk to all the time, or like a direct support group, it can be challenging, for sure. But basically, I was impressed by the amount of response, and I felt like this would be a great like first topic to dive into, to discuss and to touch on. So what I did today was I made an outline, which I'm looking at currently. You can't see it, but it's an outline of some different websites, some different resources that I've researched, mostly involving specifically therapy for music makers. So first we're going to touch on, therapy in general. And I got this from Cambridge University. So the Cambridge University Dictionary defines therapy as a treatment that helps someone feel better, grow stronger, etc., especially after an illness. This includes occupational therapy, speech therapy, group therapy, and one-on-one therapy, and a lot more as well, obviously. Which you've probably heard, some of those definitions before. Again, I've never had experience with any of those, believe it or not. But I know people watching this are gonna, think about a time where, maybe you went to speech therapy, or maybe you had some form of occupational therapy, or just any type of therapy that you've had in the past, that would apply to, this. So, I mean, that was the best definition I could find. And I know, because I come from, when I grew up, I played sports a lot. And I remember there was a lot of people that I either knew in school, or I knew, they were on my team, that would play sports and they'd get injured. And they would be doing rehabilitation, but they'd also be doing, physical therapy and mental therapy to some extent, too. And I always think sports is probably one of the major things that therapy would be super important for, because you really have to make sure that not only are you physically in shape and ready to go, but you have to have mental clarity, because that can affect you. It can affect your performance in whatever sport you're in if you're mentally not on point. So I always remember that, growing up, just the different types of things that I would hear other people go through. So a lot of those could apply to that definition for sure. So if you play sports, maybe you relate to that as well. But the main article that I had the pleasure of reading was from ASCAP, and it's an article called Types of Therapy for Musicians. ASCAP is obviously a PRO, performance rights organization. I am a member of ASCAP. If you're not a member of a PRO and you're a music maker, you should probably research that, see what a PRO is. You're going to want to be signed up for one of those. I'm thinking about doing a workshop on PROs very soon, so we'll see about that in the future. But anyway, ASCAP is a PRO, and they put out an amazing article. I believe this is from 2022, so it's fairly new, but really the information in here is not something that's going to ever really be outdated. And it's breaking down the different types of therapy that is specific to musicians. So let's see what we got here. These are several unique types of Oh no, there are. I can read. I swear. I'll do my best on this. So there might be some hiccups, but you'll get the idea, and I'll fix my mistakes. I swear. There are several unique types of therapy that music creators can benefit from, with many offered in person, online, and via mobile apps. So I pretty much put the entire list that they have, and they have a good amount of different types. A lot of these I've never heard of, so like when I was researching this, I found a lot of cool information, a lot of cool things that I didn't even know. The first one is called psychoanalytic therapy. Psychoanalytic therapy focuses on exploring the unconscious mind and identifying patterns of behavior and thought that cause emotional distress. This type of therapy may be particularly beneficial for music creators who are struggling to understand and ultimately control their emotions. When I think about making music, it is, as far as the creative side of things go, you have to use emotions. Like, that's what it's all about, is like channeling your emotions to create something from scratch that's gonna hopefully help someone else. And I always think about like people that would just rage quit. Like, if you can't like record a track the right way, or you're trying to get like vocal takes and it's just not happening, people get like pissed about that stuff. They'll just walk out of the studio, or just they'll just be fed up. Like, if they're in a session, they might just have to be like, I'm done for the day, like let me just go do something else. I've had my moments like that, but for me, I think like when I'm creating, I don't really get upset. Maybe when I started though, I do remember specifically like this is probably like 2017, when I was working with my artist J Trey at the very beginning. I was trying to mix all of his stuff, and I just remember being so frustrated with mixing. And that's definitely an instance where I basically rage quit. I was just like, nope, like I can't do this. This is just too hard. And when it says, exploring the unconscious mind, identifying patterns of behavior. So like, obviously, I think people can have those tendencies too, repeated like over and over again. And that's much deeper than just like surface level stuff. Like, that's really I think it's like the conversations you really have to have with yourself to like find out more about, why you do the things you do, as a human. And that could be channeled in different things like trauma or just past experiences in general. I've definitely found a lot of things myself that I never thought I would. Just doing that soul searching, really. But I wonder, like, if someone were to dive into that sort of therapy, like, would it be even deeper than what you could just do on your own? So I might be researching that as well. But that's called psychoanalytic therapy. So it's really just all about channeling your emotions, controlling them, things of that nature. The next form of therapy is called cognitive behavioral therapy. It's also known as CBT. It says endeavors to change negative thought patterns and behaviors, and can be beneficial for music creatives who struggle with self-doubt or negative self-talk. Obviously, you've heard the term imposter syndrome before, and I've touched on that in my podcast and on social media. I think that was another question I asked probably this summer on my social media, was how do you deal with imposter syndrome? And it's basically just, when you start having success, or you're striving to do something, you feel like you don't deserve it. You feel like what you're doing is only for your heroes or your peers or anybody else that you feel like is better than you. And you're like, well, I don't deserve that. Like, even if I enjoy doing it, I don't deserve to like do these things. So it's a form of negative talk on yourself, negative self-talk. I have definitely I still deal with that, honestly, in certain aspects of just, especially new things, because you're looking at the person that is doing it already successfully, and you're like, even if I do it, will I even be half as good as that person? And it's not, I don't think we always view it as self-talk or negative self-talk, but it really is at the end of the day. And obviously self-doubt is just a huge thing because, you can experience that at any time. Whether it's, you made a song and you just don't feel confident in it, even if you had fun making it, maybe you don't feel confident in the final product. And you're just, kind of sitting on things or procrastinating. It can lead to a lot of interesting things that, kind of indirectly bring you down as a creator. And yeah, I mean, being able to address those things, kind of like what I said before about addressing the inner stuff, like the mental stuff, it's vital, honestly, because you always have to kind of reevaluate where you're at in life too, because it always changes. I feel like we're not creatives, and just people in general, we're not stagnant beings. We're not people that just experience the same things every day of our lives and then that's it. Like our stories and our journeys are constantly evolving. We're always faced with new obstacles or just new like aspirations that we want to get to. So because of that, you're always going to have those things come up. But I feel like the more you go, you just know how to deal with it better. Different ways to deal with it. But yeah, that negative self-talk, negative self-doubt, or just self-doubt that can be a killer for sure. And just being able to just be aware of it, don't deny it, just be aware of it and find ways to address it when it comes up. But I think it'll always come up in some way. It's just like, can you manage that in a healthy way, of course. So next up we have mindfulness-based therapy. It says mindfulness-based therapy works on cultivating present moment awareness and acceptance. For music creators who struggle with anxiety or stress, this methodology can help enable the ability to focus on one task at a time and tap into flow states. I've touched a lot on scheduling, the importance of scheduling, and I might do a Twitch stream about this as well, about making schedules and how important that is. And that's exactly what this sounds like. It sounds like, during the day, if you have a lot of things to do, you become super overwhelmed and stressed from the very moment you wake up, because you're like, wow, my to-do list has 15 things on it. How could I ever get it done? And if you don't have like a plan in place, you're kind of screwed. Like, at least from my experience, like you're kind of screwed unless you're just a genius that can like prioritize as you go. I'm not like that at all. I have to know like times of the day I'm going to do these things, what kind of an order I want to do them in, a level of importance for each task. So that's like where my mind goes to immediately when I read that, is just it's almost like being mindful of, staying organized and just being able to take your anxiety and stress down, because we already have enough things going on outside of, our creative life, like in our normal life. A lot of that stuff we can't control, but I've always looked at it as the creative stuff, at least with our own work, we can control a lot of that stuff if we plan. And for me, that's been such a big thing. It's just being able to plan. But yeah, I mean, if you don't have that type of structure, like you're just asking for problems, really. And anxiety and stress can creep in at any time, I think. This methodology can help enable the ability to focus on one task at a time. And that's the thing, like focusing one task at a time. And then when you do that, you know that you are putting your all into each task as well. Because I think if you don't have like a timetable for a task, you're going to put half the amount of effort into it, and that's not going to turn out the way you wanted it to. So that's a big thing as well, I think. And tapping into flow state, which is the last sentence there. Like once you hit the flow state, it's like, it's awesome. Like, I've been able to experience that before. Not every day, like not every day is perfect, but some days, man, I'm just in that flow state, and I'm like, man, this is what it's all about. Because you're just seamlessly creating, or just seamlessly doing your thing, and you just know, like, it feels right. So if you've experienced that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But that's kind of like the goal, and then that's how you know that your planning and your structuring is working, because you're able to have that. You're able to know that that's a real thing. So, which is awesome. So next up we have interpersonal therapy. It says interpersonal therapy is all about improving relationships with one's fellow humans, especially useful for music creators struggling with communication or relationship issues. So my mind immediately goes to collaborating with other artists, which is a big part of being a musician. Obviously, like I said at the beginning, we can make a lot of things on our own. We can create things by ourselves pretty much at this point, because all the tools are pretty much there. If you want to learn how to produce, it's not that hard, to be honest. You want to learn how to mix. It might take some time, but you can do it on your own. You can pretty much do everything on your own if you really put the time in to do it. But a big part, and it's always been a big part of music, is working with other people, being able to make songs together and kick ideas back and forth and create from there. But I do know that a big thing that musicians have is we have egos, right? Like, we have our own little things that we do that we don't want to give to anybody else, or we don't want to give up for anyone else. And that's how people can butt heads, I think. If you are two like super strong forces of creative nature, if you just clash, it's like, what is going to happen here? Because you don't want to give this thing up, and this person doesn't want to give that thing up, and maybe you find a middle ground, but sometimes it doesn't always end well. And I've heard about a lot of people that they've had those issues with collaborating with people. But this also just says, relationships, which could be your family, could be a significant other, your friends. Like, all those are different relationships that have nothing to do with music. But if you have imbalance in your life as a creative, well, that's probably going to bleed over to your real life, because we take real life inspiration and we apply it to what we do as creatives. So naturally, some of that energy is coming back into what you do in your normal life too. And again, something I've heard a lot of people struggle with, which is just trying to find the balance in their life in general, and trying to maybe not people please, but just like understand how to make time for everybody, which is difficult, and make time for yourself and what you're trying to do. So that's a big thing. And really just, it says communicating with just your fellow humans, which could be anybody. You think about the amount of interactions you have on a day-to-day basis with the most random people. You go to get gas, and you go in the little convenience store thing, and you buy like a I don't know, a cherry Coke or something, who knows? And you got to interact with the cashier. You know what I mean? That's a random interaction. You don't know that person, but like, there's an exchange of energies there. So like, how are you gonna talk to that person? And then how are you gonna talk to, someone you're working with, or your family or something? And the way I've always looked at it is like, you got to try to carry the same type of energy, and hopefully it's positive energy. You got to carry that positive energy to all those interactions, whether it's the stranger or your loved ones or someone you're making an album with. That's how I've always viewed it. But, again, I think that's, everybody has their, personal ways of looking at things. And I'm sure that you guys have that as well. And like, you can think of a lot of instances where maybe you rub someone the wrong way, or maybe they rub you the wrong way, and it just didn't, it didn't work out. But yeah, it's interesting to think about, like the amount of people we actually talk to in a day that we don't even think about, that don't really come to mind. Then you stop and think, and you're like, wow, that did happen. So the next form of therapy is group therapy. Group therapy involves meeting with a group of like-minded people under the guidance of a therapist. This can be a great fit for music creators who want to connect with others who share similar experiences and challenges. Obviously, this is like a very common form of therapy. You probably could picture it immediately when I was saying it. It's, the circle of metal chairs, right? Like the therapist is here, and they're surrounded by people that have an addiction or people that are going through some like similar instance that they all can relate to. It's in plenty of shows. It's in plenty of movies. You've seen it in pop culture all over the place. So you probably know exactly what that is. And yeah, that's pretty much the parallel to like personal therapy, where you kind of get to go around the circle and say, hi, my name is so-and-so, and here's my experience with whatever. So I guess in this instance, what they're saying is you would get together with musicians who are probably dealing with something similar to you, and you would just one by one share your story, and then maybe the therapist would offer advice or offer, a guiding word of like, thank you for sharing. Here's what you can take moving forward from here. And then like you'd obviously hear the other people's stories too and do the same thing. Again, I've never done this ever. Don't know if I will do it. Who knows? We'll see. But I'm definitely familiar with it just from the way that it's presented to us in society. It's a very common form of therapy. So it's not one that I really have to think about. One of my favorite shows, The Bear, actually had a scene in like the second season where the main character's name is Carmy. He goes to therapy and he has like a super inspiring speech at like the beginning of the episode. Like that's like where my mind goes, is that show. So look that up. Like I wish I could share it here, but that's a great example of that type of therapy. But again, I don't know anyone that's done that. I've known people that have done one-on-one therapy, but not group therapy. So I can't really vouch for, what the experience would be. But if that's how you get down, if you're, you love being around groups of people. Me personally, I got a little too much anxiety for that. Even though it's like a judgment-free zone. If that's how you get down though, that might be a route you'd want to go. But I feel like finding a group of just musicians would be a little difficult, because to me it's a lot less common than like a drug addiction or something like that, where a lot more people probably have the same issues. I don't know. I mean, it would be cool. There's probably groups out there. And if you see this video, if you have been in a group like that, or you run a group like that, like, let me know in the comments on the YouTube replay. Let me know, because that would be interesting. And I think there should be a lot more groups and people like that out there, because I think we get more done as a group than just by ourselves or with even just one other person. So that's interesting to think about though. The next one is called breathwork therapy. This is actually the last one on the list, by the way, so here we go. Breathwork therapy, while seemingly simple on the surface, can facilitate a deep dive into connecting or reconnecting with yourself while addressing some underlying struggles, pathologies, trauma, and belief systems. I've heard, it's interesting they refer to this as therapy. I've almost heard of this as a form of meditating, like breathing as a form of meditation. A lot of people will wake up in the morning and practice breathing exercises. I've tried this before. I can't really find a groove with the breathing exercises. Hopefully one day I do, because I think it really is a relaxing experience, but it requires a lot of like shutting the outside world out, putting your phone down, closing the laptop, not listening to music, or hopefully no one's around, so you can just have the time to yourself. This is kind of a parallel to that first one, where it's like it's all kind of inside and it's trying to be one with yourself. But yeah, I've never experienced like total like euphoria with this. I've tried it. It is calming, but I've heard of people that are like, I had like this out of body experience where, I was able to like tap into the higher conscious and things like that. So like this is another one where I don't think it hurts to try it, and see how it goes for you. I hope that one day I'm able to find that sweet spot. And I haven't really practiced it a ton, so maybe I'm guilty of, not really sticking with it the way I should, because sometimes it's just random. If I have time, I'm like, let me try this, see what happens. It definitely calms me down, for sure. And I've found that when I get super, worked up, maybe not angry, but if I'm like really stressed or there's a lot of anxiety, I feel like if I do something like that, it actually helps a lot. So that's really where it's coming to play in my life. But, you would have a different experience with it, obviously. I think that it's worth a shot. If you've thought about doing it, if you've thought about like meditating or just doing breathing exercises like once a day, I think it's cool to try it out and see like how it works. But I've definitely not had a bad experience with it. I just haven't found that sweet spot. I haven't found like this thing that people describe as like an out of body experience or anything like that, or like tap into a creative, higher plane. Because a lot of people do that and then they'll go make the greatest album ever. Like, I would love to find that, but yeah, I haven't found that yet. So, but yeah, breathing and just like being conscious of just like the present. I think that helps with that too. Which you got to do that. You got to do that as a human being, for real. So let's see what we got here. Selecting the right therapist to fit your unique needs and personal preference is a very subjective process, but it doesn't have to be a daunting one. Here are a few tips for finding a friendly ear to keep yours in tune. So the next thing, as you just heard, the next portion of this is they give you some tips on trying to find the right help for you, because there's a lot of different types of therapy and a lot of different ways to go, but you have to narrow it down to what makes sense for you and your life. So the first thing, it says ask for recommendations. As with many things in life, a personal referral is a good place to start. Ask other music creators or healthcare professionals for recommendations if you are comfortable doing so. They may be able to recommend a therapist who specializes in working with creators or has experience with the specific challenges you're facing. So, if your friend is also a music maker and they've done some type of therapy, go to your friend and say, what was your experience like? How did you get in touch with your therapist or the people that are, that you worked with? Word of mouth, it's no different than anything else. If you're trying to find like the right situation for you, that's the best way to go. If you don't know anybody though, like it says here, look for some type of healthcare professional or just do like Google research. I think is a big thing. Just kind of like, I think it's one of those things you don't want to mess it up, like the decision. You really want to get the right help for you. So if you have to research it for a while, like I don't see any harm in doing that. I think the more legwork you put in, the better it'll be in the long run. Because if you just rush to do what everybody else is doing, or if you just, you don't put enough time into looking into things, you might not have a bad experience in that, or you might have a bad experience And then if you do, you might not want to try any more forms of therapy, which I don't think is a fair assessment. So I think just be mindful of that as well. Check with your insurance provider. If you have health insurance, check with your provider to see if they cover therapy, and note any potential differences in coverage based on whether a therapist is in or outside your network. Obviously, this is an issue based on where you live. If you're in the United States, there's a good chance you don't have health care. I don't have it. Maybe one day, I don't know. That's another discussion for another day. I could go down a rabbit hole forever about that one. But a lot of countries have free health care, and you have access maybe where you work or things like that. So that one is just, it's all based on you. If you have health care and you're able to do those things, do it. If not, then you're just going to have to find another way. Healthcare, again, at least in the United States, is really a crapshoot. So, yeah, a lot of people have it and a lot of people don't. So, but I think it's good that they put it in there just so you know. It's just like any other medical thing that you're trying to find. You know, certain things, like if you go to a dentist, insurance, you go to the doctor's office, insurance, they always ask if you have it. You know, will it cover it? Will it not? Again, that's up in the air. So it just, that really is an individual experience right there. But I think it's good to mention for sure. Do your own research. Each therapist should have an online profile of some kind with information about their areas or of expertise, where they are located, and the licenses and certifications they hold. You don't want to have just some random guy that claims to be a therapist but isn't licensed to give that advice. That would probably not be the best thing ever. Trying to think of places that would make sense to. I feel like LinkedIn might be a trusted place to find therapists, just because, like, from what I've found, obviously not everybody, but for the most part, I think LinkedIn is like, they vet people a lot more from my experience, and I feel like it's a lot more professional over on LinkedIn than it is on a lot of the other social platforms, because it's specifically designed for, you know, hiring and like finding people. I don't know if I'd go on like Fiverr and try to find a therapist, to be honest. I don't think that's a place I would go. But there might even be, they didn't provide anything. I do have some links at the end I'll let you guys know about that you can check out. They didn't provide anything like a therapist finder. Maybe there's something out there like that, like how you could find like job searches, like Angie's List. Maybe there's something like that for a therapist. I don't really know. It's 2024. I would hope something like that exists. If not, if there's somebody out there that's a therapist, you should do that, because you're going to make a lot of money. Because people are looking for therapists all the time, even if it's not music related. So like a search finder for something like that would be cool. Because like I said, obviously there's individual companies that are, you know, they have therapists that are like contracted in, but that's not like finding, you know, specific individuals, I guess, if that makes sense. Schedule a consultation. Many therapists offer a free consultation to discuss your needs and answer any questions you may have. Take advantage of this opportunity to get to know the therapist and determine if they're a good fit for you. There's never an obligation to stick with a therapist who doesn't get you. I do this with the people I work on music with. I have an introductory call, usually a FaceTime, so we actually get to see one another. And we just have a full-on discussion about like where are they in life and what are they looking for musically, things like that. So I can relate to this directly from experience. And yeah, you should vet everyone that you want to work with on a deeper level, especially when you're, you know, going to be revealing personal things and things you've never revealed to anyone else. You got to make sure you're dealing with someone that you can trust, and that has, you know, that confidentiality between you as a client and themselves. You know, that just goes back to finding the right person and taking your time, like I said earlier, because you want to make sure that you find the right person that you can trust. And it should go without saying, but I think it's important to remind people because it is something we can try to rush into, and then when we have that bad experience, we're sour about it. And it's like, no, did we really take enough time to vet that person? So, and that's the thing. I think if they are someone that's trustworthy, they will have no problem meeting with you to discuss those things. If they give you hell about that, you probably shouldn't work with them. Like that would be a red flag. I'd be like, nope, I'm out. Like, not gonna even work with this person. Gonna find somebody else. But yeah, definitely vet who you're working with. Definitely make sure they're legitimate. So now we are down to pretty much the end here, and I'm gonna give you guys some resources, some different websites that you're gonna be able to use. Some different things that you're going to be able to visit, articles to read, things like that. And I'm going to put all of these in the description of the YouTube replay. So if you're watching on Twitch, they're not going to be in anywhere on Twitch. You're going to have to go to my YouTube channel that is linked in the bio and watch the replay, and you're going to see all the links that I'm about to read so you can check them out. The first one is the article that I just read you guys, which is the Therapy for Music Creators, which is ASCAP. So let me see if I can open this thing in a different link. So I'm trying to find, let me see if I can do this real quick. Bear with me, guys. Let's see what we got here. I might just have to link this one in. But if you go to, so I'm not going to give you the specific address, but if you go to ASCAP's website, which is just ascap.com, the official title of the article is A Beginner's Guide to Therapy for Music Creators. And it was actually published in 2023, so not 2022. So it's even more fresh than I originally thought it was. But again, this information doesn't really go out of date. And there's even more on there than what I read. I did not read this whole introduction, so they have like a different introduction about like case studies that they've done and different involvement that the organization has had in these sorts of practices. So there's a lot of cool things on that. But again, if you don't want to like find it, on a scavenger hunt, just go to the YouTube replay and you'll be able to find it in that description. The next one is BetterHelp.com, which is something you're probably familiar with because, again, at this point, online therapy has kind of blown up over the last 4 years, ever since the pandemic. BetterHelp is the biggest one there is, at least that I'm aware of. So I put that down here. They offer individual, couple, and teen therapy options. No group options, I don't believe. So this is more of that one-on-one thing. Couples therapy, that doesn't really have to do with music. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. And teen therapy, I don't know. Teenagers, whatever they're dealing with. But it's cool that they have options. But I'm thinking more of the one-on-one therapy thing. If that's what the route you want to go, and you can't really afford the in-person stuff, or you don't feel comfortable with the in-person stuff, definitely check out BetterHelp.com. I'm not really sure about I can talk. I'm not really sure about the pricing. Their front page of their website did not have information about pricing, but I assume it's affordable because they are a huge company and they're a company that a lot of people have used. One of my good friends actually found his therapist through BetterHelp, and he described his experience as really good. So, if you're looking to find a trusted therapist and work through a site that's legitimate, BetterHelp is definitely the way to go. But definitely check out the link for the pricing, because I don't know about pricing. It's probably per session if I had to guess, but just check it out and see what's up. And then the final one is Music Industry Therapist Collective, which is, their website is musicindustrytherapists.com. So let me open this real quick because I thought this one was really cool. Let me see this real quick. Open that tab. Here we go. because this was, like I said, I was doing some not really extensive research, but just some, a little bit of deep diving to see what I could find. So they have different types of therapy options on their site: counseling and psychotherapy, training and consultations, and events and public speaking. MITC. So yeah, they offer different services. They have access to therapists, a news column, some different publications that you can check out. It's another really cool resource specifically designed for musicians and creatives. MITC's psychotherapists, counselors, medics, and psychologists have lived experience of your industry's unique demands. So I thought this one was great because it's proven, it's been vetted by a lot of people, and again, it's specific for musicians. So you're definitely going to want to check that one out. I think that was probably the best one I found. So definitely give that link a click on the YouTube replay, but it's in musicindustrytherapist.com. So yeah, that concludes today's stream. About 45 minutes, that's pretty good. Under an hour, that's really what I'm aiming for. But yeah, that was not even a full deep dive into this topic. This topic could be talked about forever. I could go on and on and on. But I wanted to keep it kind of short and concise and just give you guys a little bit of a broader view of what this is. And hopefully the people that commented on my post will check this out, because it's a lot more in depth. And hopefully if you just saw this randomly, this helps you out there. So yeah, I mean, I had a lot of fun researching it, and I'm definitely going to be, incorporating this stuff into my own life as well as a music maker. So it's going to be interesting to see, and I'm going to keep doing extensive research on it as well. Maybe we'll do like a part 2 one day, but I think this is a great place to start. And like I said, check out those links in the YouTube replay, and hopefully you can find help if you're looking for help. Hopefully this video inspires you to get help. That's kind of the point of this whole thing. But I thought this was a great topic to dive into, to kind of get these streams officially going after the introduction last week. So before we get out of here, next week is going to be talking about content creation tools. So I'm going to be talking about, what I use to make like social media content, like the things I post on YouTube and Instagram, like thumbnails, just like the different things I use, which isn't going to be super extensive. It's going to be like, just from my lens, like what do I use? But yeah, I appreciate you guys for, checking this out. And like I said, if you see this, my hope is that you get inspired to seek some form of therapy eventually, even if it's not today. Hopefully one day, you can get into it, and it'll help you and really expand your reach as a creative and just improve your life, honestly, which I think we're all trying to do at the end of the day. So I appreciate you guys, and we're going to get on out of here. We'll see you next week on 24th, I believe is that date. But we'll see you then. And thanks, as always, for checking out the channel. So we're getting up out of here. All right, guys. Take care.